Hi, everyone. It's Kelly from the Hub here today with our friend Meg, who is our resident potter. How are you there, friend?
I'm doing great. I have the day off work, so I've just been relaxing at home.
That's wonderful. Good. Remember, last week we met Meg and we did the whole, like, what does it mean to throw clay and how do you do all that stuff? And I promised that I would show my representative mug. This is Megan Warner exclusive, and you can buy them on her Etsy shop, and we'll talk about that in a future episode. So I'll be having a mysterious beverage of choice out of this mug during our time together. So today we're going to throw some clay.
Yes. Yeah, I'm in my studio. If you can see the cinder block behind me. Yeah, this is where I do most of the pottery, is here in the basement.
This is your basement, and we're going to do this.
Yes.
You're going to show us how it works. Okay. I'm totally excited. All right. So this is 100% you. I'll just make ooh and ah sounds a lot, I guess, and ask some questions.
Yeah, feel free to ask whatever questions you want.
All right. So
put the camera down when it's time, though.
Do you get a glob of clay that you like?
Yes. Yeah. So let me grab my bag here. Clay comes in a bag like this, and it starts full, and these are 25 pounds. So you buy it in big blocks like this.
And then you like cut it with a string or whatever, because that's easier than a knife or whatever you use.
Yep, we all use wire tools, so it's just a wire between two little handles, and you cut your little cubes off, and so then that's when you have these pieces.
Isn't that the same tool that sometimes I see in movies that people accidentally kill other people with?
You're probably right.
Okay, all right. And by accidentally, I mean not really accidentally. Okay, so you cut off the piece of clay, and then you have that. All right, now what?
So you want to cut the size that you want, and if I want to throw 4 bowls that are the same shape and size, I want to have 4 cubes that are the same weight. So I don't usually weigh them. I usually just cut off a hunk and make whatever comes out of it. But if you want to be particular, you can definitely weigh these cubes. Okay. And then once you have it, you just boop all the corners in with your palm. And your palm will bruise if you do this all day long.
And you know this, I'm sure, because this has happened to you.
Yes.
I guess I didn't think you could bruise your palm, but I guess if you're pounding stuff like that all the time.
Yeah, and you have to hit it pretty hard, especially if it's a little firmer. And you're just trying to make kind of like a ball or a potato shape. Something like that. Doesn't have to be perfect, but then you have your little clay potato. All right. And all right, now I'm going to tilt my camera down so you can see my wheel.
Oh, cool.
How's that angle look?
That's perfect.
Okay, cool. So I did, the next part is you take your ball of clay and you smack it down on the wheel, and then you have to center it. I did that part before just because that can take a little bit of time and it's not that exciting. Okay. So I already did that. And so this is my centered ball of clay on a
Because if it's not centered, it's going to wobble all over the place and not do what you want.
Oh yeah, and it has to be centered. That is I struggled with that the most when I first started. You have to have a lot of strength to do it. It really takes like a lot of muscle to be able to get it into the center. And I really struggled with that. But yeah, the more you do it, the better you get at it, and then it will look something like this. And these are just like wooden boards that fit onto your wheel head so that it secures it. Some people just throw it directly onto the wheel, but I prefer to use bats.
Oh, okay.
And you can get these in plastic or plaster. There's a few other materials you can use, but yep, these little wood ones are my favorite. Okay, so I'm gonna start. And first you have to make sure your sleeves are up because you will get messy. Get clay all over everything.
I was gonna say, at some moment there could be like an explosion of little clay bits everywhere. Okay.
So first step is you get your hands wet. I have a bucket of warm water here. And now that I'm already centered, you can probably see that while you can see my bat moving, you can't really see my clay moving that much.
Right.
And that means that it's centered. If it looks like it's going back and forth and wobbling, it lets you know that you still need to get it into the middle of your wheel so you can start going.
Okay, cool.
So.
Oh, so you're pressing down in the middle and that sort of widens it out a little. Oh, look at that.
Yeah, so this hand, typically your right hand is used to pull inward, and then your top hand presses down. So that, I mean, if you're applying equal pressure that way, it's not really going to change the shape of it. It's just compressing the clay down into a smaller block.
Right.
Now, if I put all my pressure on this hand, we're going to get a taller piece of clay. And if I put all my pressure on my top hand, we're going to get a flat, like a plate type situation.
Oh, okay. So you balance out your hand movement to get the shape you want.
Yeah. Yep. And because I think I'm going to throw a mug with this, I want it to be kind of narrow here. So I'm just going to get it to the shape that I want to start with.
So is the bottom that's on the plate the top of the mug or the bottom of the mug?
The bottom. Yep.
Okay. Okay.
So, yeah, whatever I want the base of my mug to be when I'm done is going to be roughly this size.
Okay.
So if I want a really wide mug, I need to start with a bit of a wider base, or if I want, to make a shot glass, I got to start with really little amount of clay.
Oh, okay.
So always have to make sure your hands are wet. Now we're going to make the hole in the middle. My teacher always called it making a donut. So it's basically when you just press your thumbs down into your clay ball. And this is when we're starting to make the shape of our mug or our cup or our bowl. And you can't go down too far or your mug will have a hole in it.
Right. And then that's just for artistic purposes, not for practical purposes.
Then you can put a plant in it, and that's your drainage hole.
That's true. That's true.
Oh, okay. I'm just widening the bottom of my pot out here.
Okay, so what if all of a sudden you decided I wanted it smaller?
You can work it back to be smaller. I typically don't. I find it can get kind of tricky.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, once you have that block of clay, you have that block of clay. If you want something smaller, you sort of got to start over with a smaller block.
Yeah, I would say you can go, maybe an inch or two smaller, but definitely don't start out with, a base this big and try to get it down like that.
Okay, I get that.
Especially once you stick your fingers in it and you get the bottom done out too, that'll make it trickier. Okay, so now I have, right now, a really thick, small bowl.
Yeah.
And so the next part is what we call pulling. And so that basically means you put the wall of your clay body in between your two fingers. And you're going to take it and you're going to slowly pull the clay up.
Oh, cool.
And this is how you get height. So I don't think this would make a very good mug as it is because it is really short.
Right. It's more like a dog food dish.
Yes. Yep. So I'm just going to start at the bottom and very slowly
neat.
Move my fingers up together. And you'll probably see it's getting a little bit taller.
Yeah.
And a little bit thinner because.
Okay. Yep.
So this is a little bit closer to a mug, but it's still pretty thick and still kind of short. So I'm going to keep going.
Wow. And that's just in between your fingers. You really are like gently pulling it.
Yep. Yeah. And you have to be really consistent with the pressure because if, you start out with not a lot of pressure and then you move up a little bit and you push really hard, then you're gonna make a really weak spot in the side of your mug.
Oh, okay.
Thin there, and that's probably gonna tear and cause you problems later.
Okay.
So as you're doing it, it's you really want to be as consistent as you can, just so you have an even wall thickness throughout your mug that you're making. So he's pretty tall. I want it to be a little bit narrower. So I'm gonna just squeeze them like this a little bit. Just to get it closer to the shape that I want when I'm done.
I'm showing everybody my mug just for like, it might not be the same look, but like just because like sometimes you need like another frame of reference. So I just pulled up mine so people could see like how it sort of works. Okay, cool.
Yeah, perfect. And one thing that, so because the way that the wheel spins, it causes centrifugal motion,
Yeah.
which means that everything wants to splay outwards.
Yep.
So that's why as you pull, you'll tend to notice that your clay wants to open like this and be wider at the top than it is at the bottom. Really good potters can just, perfectly pull up into the exact shape that they want, but I'm not quite that good yet. So I always have to stop and do a little bit of squeezing just to make sure the top doesn't get all crazy on me. All right, so it's still pretty thick. I've got quite a bit of clay here, so I'm going to do a couple more pulls, see how tall I can get it.
Wow.
And that's pretty tall.
And you've got a little lip on the edge.
Yeah, I like to leave the top a little bit thicker. I recently started doing that. I just think it looks nicer when it's all done, to have that little lip at the top.
Yeah, you can see on my mug, she has the same sort of thing. There's like a little lip on the top. And I gotta say, it's nice to drink out of that way.
Good. Yeah, when I first started, I would make all these mugs and cups and things, and then I'd use them for a little while and realize I don't actually like drinking out of this. Either the handle's a goofy shape or the opening is too small, and so that it actually helped a lot for me to figure out.
Oh yeah, I will say I love this handle. One of the reasons why I like this, well, one of them is this is a big honking handle, and I have big hands, so I love the shape of this handle. I feel like I can just really grab onto it.
Yeah, I tend to do really big handles just because I like big handles. My boyfriend has really big hands, so he definitely likes big handles.
Yeah.
And I hear from a lot of other people that they're like, yeah, I love this giant handle, and it doesn't feel like I'm holding onto a little teacup. It feels like okay. I'm just going in with a sponge on my right hand too, just to kind of smooth up the edges of it, because I think this is about the shape and thickness that I want. I'm probably going to add a little bit of a bump or a belly down at the bottom, just it's not so straight up and down.
Oh, that's sort of like mine too. It's got it's got like a little, like it's hippie.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. So I'll usually throw like a straight up and down cylinder, and then I'll come inside and I'm pushing towards myself right now, gently.
Oh, okay.
A little, yeah. You can
oh, that's so neat.
Yep.
Yeah, it looks like this. Look how cool that is. Wow.
Yeah. I'm gonna make sure that the rim is nice and compressed. I did pretty good. A lot of the times the lip ends up uneven for me, and I have to go in and trim that a little bit off just so it's level, but this one's good, so I don't need to do any other trimming. It looks good. Now I think I'm gonna add a foot, and I can show you what that looks like. So I have this tool, and it looks like this. And so you can see it's got these two things on the end of it on each side.
Yeah.
And so what I'm going to do is just push that into.
Yeah, one's more rounded and one's more pointed.
Yep. And so what that's going to do is help me out later to make a little, they call them feet for your pots. And that's something for it to sit on. It also helps with glazing. We can talk about that later.
Okay.
So you can add this when you do the trimming, which I'll talk about in a little bit, or you can add it while you're throwing, just to make your life a little bit easier. And I recently got this tool and I really like it. So I'm going to go ahead and add one. And make sure it's a little bit wet just so it doesn't catch.
And so it's removing what you don't want.
Yep.
And helping to like define the shape a little better.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I see that. That's neat.
Yeah. I'll bring it up closer here in a second. I'm just going to do a little bit of cleanup. I'm going to clean off my back so it saves me some time later. And there's a bunch of water that has accumulated in the bottom of my mug. You want to get that out so that it dries more evenly. So I have my cool little sponge and a stick tool. You just stick it in there to get all the water out. And
so cool.
It's done. So then you can throw off your back.
You just threw a mug.
I did. Yeah, and this one's.
Look at that.
I make this shape a lot. I like the ones with the bellies. And
Yeah, I like it too. It's a good shape. So then how do you put the handle on? That's separate? That's not a throwing thing because if it was thrown, then it would go all the way around and that's not how a handle works.
yeah, that's correct. So let me put this down and get my hands a little bit cleaner and I can show you that.
Okay. This is so cool. Isn't this awesome? I have to tell you. So like, I think that we all think we know how pottery wheels and stuff work, but I think when you see it in action, you really go, I learned some things about this.
Good, I'm glad. Okay, so here I can adjust the camera back. So, nope. Okay,
Perfect.
so this is a handle I made a while ago. And
Oh,
yeah,
so you like pre-make handles.
yes, yeah. So now that I threw my mug over there and it's pretty wet right now. I have to let it dry for a day or 2 or 3 or 4. It really depends on the humidity. I didn't realize how much that affected the timeline of things, but it is super dry here, which means I have to work very fast or things get too dry to trim.
I was going to say, but not in the summer when it could sit for several days. If you've ever been to Michigan in the summer, it is humid, man.
It is. Yeah, and so the same thing with handles. You want to attach it to your mug at about the same wetness level. So if your mug is pretty dry, you want your handle to be similar dryness, or else it can pop off. It won't adhere correctly. So I'll make these in advance just so I can slowly dry them to get them to the point where I want them. This one is too dry. I'm gonna have to toss this one. That's totally fine. It happens all the time.
So you can't so since you've made that one and it's too dry, you can't re-wet it. It's like once it's gone to that place, you can't like recycle it back, right?
I could spray it with water, and it would loosen up and I could bend it a little bit more. Like if I try to bend this, it's gonna snap right now. Okay. So I could totally spray it with water and put it in a plastic bag. But what I find that because handles are pretty delicate, it'll often get like marks and divots and like the texture from the plastic bag as it's the moisture's going through it. Yeah. So I've tried to save handles before. Most of the time it's better to just toss it and start again because they're pretty easy. Yeah, so to make that is you basically start with a ball of clay, something like this shape, a little bit smaller usually. And you just grab the top and you add water and you pull it down until you get a really long, skinny, handle looking piece of clay. And then you have to position it somewhere so that it can dry correctly. And as it dries, then you can start to put it in a rough estimate of the shape that you would want. And then once it's the perfect level of dryness, you can attach it to your mug.
So you can't really shape it until it's dried a little bit because it won't hold that shape. So you just make like the rod, I guess.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, okay. So then as it dries, then you can curve it around and then it'll hold its shape. And then when it's the same dryness as the utensil, then you lick it.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So when you pull them, they're like wiggling, flopping.
Whoa, okay. Yeah.
At all. And so, usually I'll let them dry for a couple hours. They're pretty thin, so they dry quick. And then I'll come down, check on them, cut them into a shape, position them into a rough idea of what I want. And then I'll let them dry a little bit further in more of a shape like this.
And then how do you make it so it looks like it's not attached, like it was just born that way? Because like even on mine, it looks like it was just born that way. It doesn't look like you had to, like you attached a piece on it. Like it's so smooth.
A lot of that is the glaze. The glaze will cover up a lot of the harsh lines that can be from, just sticking a handle onto your clay body. So actually, let me grab this. This is a mug I made yesterday. This one hasn't been trimmed yet, so I can talk about that too.
Okay.
Well, yeah, let's say this handle's obviously too big for this mug, but let's say I wanted to adhere this here.
Yeah.
What you do first is there's like a little scratchy needly tool that you score. So you're making, you're adding some texture to the mug.
Yeah.
And then you also add that here.
So it's gonna make it look like it's like clay Velcro.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And then you add a little bit of liquidy clay. It's called slip. So like the things that come off my hand as I throw, I put on
Oh,
the
yeah.
tip. And that's kind of like glue. So you just dab it on and then you press your handle into it. And then most of the time that doesn't look super awesome. So what I like to do is I'll take a bit of wet clay and I'll roll it into like a little worm looking thing like
Yeah.
this. And then you can line it around the handle where it's attached to the mug. And then with a little tool, you can add water and blend it out so that
it's like you're putting caulk in the bathroom.
yeah, exactly.
Okay,
Really,
yeah, and then you use your finger or a tool thing to smooth it so you can't tell that you just put caulk in.
yep. So I use these little things all the time. Yeah, and
Ah,
so
see, okay, so you know that you're taking all the magic out of this, but that's sort of why we're doing it, because I think, people are like, mug, and you forget that there's, we're like seeing behind the like artistic curtain to see how you do it. Okay, so you put it on and then you put the little worm thing on there like caulk, and then you smooth it so you can't see the seam as well.
yes, yep, exactly. And let me
Beautiful.
I have an example here for you. So I did this one a couple days ago. Yeah, so this is what it looks like after I've put the handle on.
Oh yeah.
And you might not be able to tell on camera, but it's not perfect. You can see some
Yeah,
of,
you can see that there's smoothing. Yeah.
and so the glaze will help cover that up too. So if
Okay.
it doesn't, 100% perfect once you get the handle on, that's okay because the glaze will smooth some stuff.
Yeah, and I guess it's also like, what is your aesthetic? Like, there are people who would throw clay and have, they're making daintier pieces. So they want to smooth it more. Yours are more rustic.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, like that, so it's okay if there's a imperfection or something, because that's the aesthetic. If there was, it would be weird if it was opposite, right? If you put like, if the handle was too dainty for the shape, or if, whatever, however that works.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
So we threw it, we put the handle on it, and you have that little sample one. So this, and I've sort of said this before, I call this your little trademark design.
Yeah.
So how do you do that?
Do these. Yeah. So let me find some of my little tools here. Okay. So this is a good one that I use. You can see it's like a little. So basically you just hold your mug and you carve into it like this. You just go all the way around.
And that's just like you're taking like little scoops out of it.
Yes. Actually, I wish I had an example little scoop laying around here to show you, but yeah, it ends up looking like a whole bunch of little fingernails on my wheel once I'm done, because they're all these little cylinder shapes. So
yeah.
You just go all the way around. You have to be pretty careful. If you press too hard, your mug will break. And if you carve too much, you'll carve a hole straight through it. So it's definitely a learning curve, but I really love to do these textures on it. It's very fun, and I think they always look nice.
Is this like your signature? I mean, I've called it your signature just because I've seen it in several of your pieces, and that's what mine is like. And I think that you've got like different, like this is a long one and then a tiny one, and like that one you have in your hand is like 3 or 4. It's like 4 medium ones, or small, medium. So like it's different how you do it.
Yeah, I have a whole bunch of other different styles. I use this scary looking knife.
Oh, ooh, yeah.
So this one, you kind of carve it like you would an apple.
Oh, okay.
Grooves out of it. So this one makes larger kind of geometric shapes as you carve.
Mm-hmm.
And that always turns out really cool. I have this tool, which is pointier at the top, and so this makes skinnier carvings in it. I have even this one, which makes really
little tiny ones. Yeah.
And so I do carvings on a lot of my stuff just because it's fun to do and I like the way it looks. I may someday hate it and never do it again. But yeah, for the time being, I just do what's fun and what I think looks nice. And people I seem to like the carved ones, so
That might be like Picasso's blue period. This would
yeah,
be Megan's carved period.
yeah.
So
Mhm.
when you're super famous and people and like children are studying your pottery, they'll be like, oh, that's the Warner carved period.
Yeah, maybe.
That's awesome. So what's your specialty, do you think? Like, what do you like to throw the most?
Oh, I would say mugs. I love doing mugs as much as I have a love-hate relationship with handles. They can be kind of finicky.
Oh,
But I love the end product of a mug. I love how they turn out and I love using them. I think mugs are my favorite.
and you also throw like plant pots.
Yep, I do. I have this on here to show you. This was one I did a couple days ago. So this one has a drainage hole at the bottom.
Cool. And so we can see that. Okay, and I'm just going to ask this question. So the top looks lighter. That's just because it's drier, and the bottom looks darker because it's still wetter.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So this one is halfway through drying and it's been sitting on the table like this and whatever's, up in the air more tends to dry faster. So yeah, I will rotate things to help them dry evenly, but this one's drying unevenly, as you can see by the
Okay.
gradient there.
Very
Yep.
cool. And do you do bowls, like bowls that people have cereal out of?
Yeah, I do. I can grab I have some of those here. So I made these recently. There's two here stacked.
Oh, wow.
These are just
That's
pretty
cool.
standard bowls.
And so let's ask this question. All the things that we've seen are functional.
Yes.
Do you also do artistic? I mean, I guess I shouldn't call these not artistic. So things that are not functional, that are more designed for a different kind of aesthetic.
Yeah, more like decor pieces, things like that.
Yes, yes.
Okay. I haven't made, I don't think, anything. I just made a vase, which is probably the closest thing so far.
But you can
um,
still use that as, like, if someone looked at it, they would go, vase. Like they would totally know that that's a vase. But like some things that people throw, you would look at and go, art. Like you
yeah,
wouldn't, it doesn't have like a purpose of to be functional, I guess.
and I haven't made anything like that. I think I might be
Okay.
too practical, where, I see those, I'm like, oh wow, that's beautiful, but I don't think I have the creativity or the mindset to be able to just make something that looks good and that's its only purpose.
Yeah.
So
And that might be your future, or that might not be your future. That might be you have to feel like you, I don't know, perfect other things first, you know what I mean? And then, yeah, who knows? Because I had that conversation with my father about his wood pieces, because he's like, mine aren't necessarily functional. He's got, there's holes in them, and because of the way the wood works. And he and I talked about, there's a huge difference between, he always calls his kind of art is reduction, and yours is the opposite, because he's taking a big thing and cutting parts off of it.
yeah.
And you are deciding the size of something and then shaping it to fit your needs. So there are some similarities, but there are also some differences.
Right. Yeah.
Like he always says, I let the wood talk to me. And after talking with him about that for a long time, I understand it. And I think some of the viewers understood that too, because that can be sort of complicated. So I guess I will ask you this question. Does the clay talk to you? Like, does it tell you how, like what you should make out of it? Or is it more like you are the master of the clay and you tell the clay what we're making today?
Oh,
I know
I
that
guess
sounds, that might sound really esoteric, but it's sort of interesting.
I would say I feel more like the master because, yeah, you know, I'll start with this ball of clay, but I always know what I want to make before I put it on the wheel. And sometimes it does not go that way. If I'm trying to make a really skinny tall mug and the clay does not want to, it just wants to be big and wide, then I'll be okay, screw it. I'll make a planter, I'll make a bowl. Um, yeah, and yeah, the clay definitely it sometimes it does have a mind of its own too. Especially if it's not fresh out of the bag. If it's something that I've recycled, it can be very, very finicky. And then I feel like I have no say in that.
That's interesting. So sometimes clay can act like an unruly toddler
Yes.
and it does
Yeah.
whatever it wants.
Yeah. I was throwing a couple days ago with some recycled clay. And I must have done a terrible job at wedging it because it was a disaster. There were hard lumps in it, there were air bubbles all over. I was having a heck of a time throwing anything that even turned into a shape.
Yeah.
Most of it I would just destroy it, and then with my little piece at the bottom, I'd make a spoon rest and think, okay, at least I made something with it. So there are certainly days like that where, I mean, it's probably my fault. I'm not a super good wedger of clay, and it doesn't help that it's very cold, so I don't want to do it as long as I need to. But yeah, there are definitely days when nothing works.
That's fascinating. That's fascinating. That's really cool. Meg, I have to say, throwing with you was very fun. And next week we're going to glaze and fire, right? Are those all the right words?
Yes. Yeah,
All right.
perfect.
So we will glaze and fire next week. And I will once again have a beverage out of my mug and we will discuss all things clay.
Awesome. Thank you,
Lovely.
Kelly.
Thank you very much. See you guys.